Welcome to the Battle Hub Draft League podcast, 2-hour audio entertainment provided by your Battle Hub Draft League crew. Enjoy. What's going on, everyone? My name is Scorpion, your current Battle Hub Draft League owner, and welcome to the first episode of what I like to call the Battle Hub Draft League podcast. As I said, this will be nice, long audio entertainment from yours truly, but not just me, but also my staff team. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things, Pokemon related to draft, related to Generation 9 as a whole. And like I said, it's not going to be, I'm going to say this right now, it's not going to be too visually stimulating, but I will have some things up on the screen just so you know of what we're talking about. But yeah, make sure you go do your little thing, put it on in the background. And as I said, we are here to provide some audio entertainment for you guys. We're going to get started in a minute, but before I do that, allow me to introduce my guests, starting with another one of my commissioners, the one and only Emerald Miner. Say hi to the people, friend.
All right, people. We got a nice little post-season podcast for y'all, just talking about some questions that we got from y'all and any topics we want to discuss. And I'm just here to have a good time. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot who I was supposed to pass it along to next, so I'm just gonna ad-lib that it was Miror. What's going on?
It's always Beanard. That's right. Hey, everybody, Captain Beanard here. And in case you are not sick of the sound of my voice yet after watching all those Captain recaps, I am back to talk even more about Pokemon and other nonsense as well. So yeah, that's kind of the game plan here. But of course, we also have Brandon P on deck as well. Isn't that right?
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Brandon P here, and I'm just happy to be here. And I'm glad that y'all are here. I'm glad everybody's here. So without further ado, Scorpion.
I'm being so glad about everything. It's weird.
Hey, listen, it's me. It's me.
We're very glad to have you.
It's me. It's Brandon P.
I like that. All right. Yeah.
Any wrestling fans from back in the day? No, never mind. I just went off the time in Dallas Page, but it's all good. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so thank you guys so much for joining me today. As I said, me and these people have been sort of enthusiastically organizing 2 seasons of Battle Hub Draft League now, and also participating in 4 of them, in the Battle Hub Draft League here. We're going to be talking about that, because that draft as a whole, and even a little bit of Generation 9. So without further ado, that's one thing I want to actually do. I want to start off broad, and any of you can answer this. I wanted to start with a nice little topic, and this can be about anything. This can be about competitive, but can also be about even what you thought of it when you were playing through Scarlet and Violet's story. What do you think of terrestrialization?
All right. I actually quite like terrestrialization a lot. I think it's behind Mega Evolutions. I think it's my favorite generational gimmick, as I like to call them, because in Gen 9 here we have terrestrialization. Then of course in Gen 8 we had Dynamax, in Gen 7 we had Z moves, and then in Gen 6 we had Mega Evolutions. I still think Mega Evolution takes the cake, but I do like terrestrialization a lot. I think it's a pretty close second. It's a cool mechanic that kind of brings a level of unpredictability and creativity to the game. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it also makes certain Pokemon more viable if they have like a shit type combination that they can shed, in favor of a better one. So yeah, I'm a big fan personally.
Yeah.
And think about Gen 9. For those of you that don't know this, I did not get to play Pokemon from Gen 5 all the way through like the end of Gen 8. And just to be very specific on this, I did not get to play Black 2 or White 2. And when I got my Sword and Shield, it was literally like 2 months before Scarlet and Violet came out. And I just got it so I can get like a sense of where Pokemon was at. So for this to basically be my first like core series game that I'm playing since, 2012. And the whole thing is you get to change your Terra and how you use it to benefit you in battle. I think it's pretty cool, because before this, it was no gimmicks. It was just, does your team match into this team well? And back then, I didn't even know what EVs were. So now I'm just learning all this other stuff, and then just, I feel like Terra just made it fun, a fun process. it was a very fun thing to be basically what I came back to. But Emerald, Scorp, what do y'all think?
Yeah.
I think for me that my first games were X and Y, so obviously Megas had a pretty big impact on me. I think that just how, like, you think they could just change your type, your ability, your stats. They had a whole different decks for them. They were just so much more intricate than everything else. But the problem with it was limited in terms of the scope, how many could have access to it. And Z moves gave it to everybody, but it was a one-time thing. And Dynamax went too far because it was everybody, but it could snowball out of control, and they had to ban it from Smogon. I think Terra is like right down the middle, where it can last the rest of the game, but it doesn't change everything too drastically. It doesn't necessarily snowball. It's not going to boost your stats. It's just going to give you a whole new type, and it makes that new mind game where it's like, well, when are they going to Terra? What are they going to Terra into? And I think that mind game mechanic is one of my favorite parts of competitive battling. So I think that Megas take the cake, like Beanard said, but Terra's right under there, just for the mind games.
Yeah. For me personally, I agree. I started playing Pokemon, at least competitively, in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So I also experienced the Megas, and I also experienced the Z moves. I did skip Sword and Shield for more reasons than one. But TLDR, I was not a fan of that game, just the way it looked and the Pokemon and stuff. So I never got...
I thought it was because of prejudice against England.
Oh, no, not for me anyway. I mean, I like England.
You know, you're not a safe, self-hating UK man. No.
Nah, not me. But I will say a part of it did make me part of the reason why I did boycott it was because there was no Torterra. That genuinely did make me quite butthurt.
Oh dear God.
Yeah, that was genuinely part of the reason why I didn't get the game. But so I never got to experience Dynamax, so I don't have much to say about that, although it did look pretty busted. But me personally, I also think Mega Evolutions are by far the coolest thing. I thought Megas were very, very interesting. However, like we've touched upon, the mechanic of Mega Evolution only applies to certain Pokemon, whereas Z moves and Terrestrialization is accessible to everything. Now, as far as Terrestrialization goes, I personally really like sort of the way it was introduced. I'm definitely someone who pays a lot of attention to the story and the lore when I'm playing through a Pokemon game. I read all the dialogue and stuff like that. The way Terrestrialization works to me is very fascinating, and I remember being told by the NPCs, how this mechanic works, and I was already my competitive mind started working. I can't wait to see what this does for the competitive scene and what Terra types are going to be optimal for what Pokemon. And obviously when Terra Blast came into the picture, that was also a big thing, which Pokemon are going to really benefit from that coverage. A little bit into it, obviously I have, for those who don't know, I have quite a bit of experience playing competitive in Gen 9. I also have, I have played a lot of high level, well, not really tournament gameplay, but I have reached the 1900s on the Pokemon Shard and OU ladder. And so I've got quite a bit of experience with it. I do think it's a very fun mechanic, and I'm, for one, even though it definitely has its issues, I'm definitely still glad that they never banned it or restricted it in some way. I think that the mechanic as a whole is very fascinating, just seeing the many different uses that you can do it. Obviously some Pokemon run it for a better defensive typing, some Pokemon run it for the coverage of Terra Blast, but there's also plenty of Pokemon that use it for a combination of those things, so I think that's really, really sort of a cool gimmick. So there's even obviously hidden utility, for example terrestrializing into a ghost type to block Rapid Spin. Some people specifically do that. I think it's a very, very, very cool mechanic. I definitely do like it more than Z moves, and also just the in-game animations for it look really, really cool. But I will say that I am a little bit shocked that this mechanic was never restricted in competitive, because there are many, many Pokemon this generation. For those who don't know, there are there's an exponential increase in the amount of Pokemon that got banned from Scarlet and Violet overused, or just overused in general this generation. And a lot of those are because of terrestrialization. Good examples include Volcarona and Regieleki, which obviously would have never gotten banned if it wasn't for Terra. But I think the mechanic is really great. However, I am not surprised that this mechanic, for the most part, is restricted in draft, because it is very, very powerful. However, before we move on to that, there's one more small subtopic that I want to talk to you guys about. And that is what did you initially think, and also what do you think of it now, when Pokemon introduced the Stellar Terra type?
So I'll be honest with you, I am wholly disappointed with the whole Stellar thing. I thought it was going to be more than it was, I guess. I think the fact that it doesn't change the type interaction at all is the thing that kills it, because you get like a little power boost, whatever, when you use it. But I think it's kind of a bust, because the big benefit to terastallizing, of course, is when you change your type, you flip your type charts around, right? So if you're a normal type and you tear into a ghost type, someone was going for a fighting attack because it was super effective, and now it's no effect, right? So that kind of concept is really the big hook of Terra to me, is that surprise factor. And with Terra Stellar, there's just none of that, obviously, because you keep the exact same weaknesses, resistances, all that kind of thing. The power boost is kind of like, unless you're in a specific situation where you're benefiting in other ways, like say Superior with Contrary, that kind of thing. I'm just not a fan of that at all. I was hoping for, out of Terra Stellar, I was hoping it would almost be like an all new type in a sense, like Fire, Water, Grass, like an actual type that would just maybe be like neutral to everything, which, normal is close to that, but it still has, things that resist it and are immune to it, that kind of thing. So I was pretty disappointed with Terra Stellar, to be honest with you. That doesn't really change how I feel about Terra as a whole. I still feel very positive about Terra as a whole, and actually Gen 9 as a whole too. I'm pretty happy with the way that Gen 9 kind of came together after we got all the DLCs and everything. But Terra Stellar, not really a fan.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that as well, because the way Terra Stellar was like promoted, right? I remember fans going crazy over those screenshots that were posted on the Pokemon website about this new Stellar Terra type, and it was like, whoa, this is going to be a new type, neutral to every type, or even like, people thought this was going to warp the game, and then when it came out, my God, was it a letdown?
It's a big bust. Yeah, it's just a big bust.
For sure. I think, for me personally, I was very hyped for Stellar. I have to be honest, when the Stellar Terra type was announced and we didn't know anything about it, I was super hyped for it. And when I was playing through the Indigo disc, I was really excited to learn more about this new 19th Terra type. I will say, I feel like when I was reading, this is even explained in game, but and in the in-game manual, but it's like I feel like they made Stellar as a Terra type, thought of the idea of, okay, let's make a type that represents every other type at once, right? Yeah, that was the idea, because you have all the little type symbols on your head. But then it can't be too broken. So I feel like they gave it a lot of nerfs. It feels like this Terra type has been nerfed from the start. Because first of all, when using Terra Blast Stellar, your attack and special attack goes down by one stage. So only Contrary users can abuse that, but obviously for everyone else, it's not as good. Then there's also the fact that coverage moves are only boosted by 20% rather than 50%. Like your stabs are boosted by 50% once, but your stabs are not. Brings me to the next thing. Every move or every type is only boosted once. Why did we need all of these restrictions? You could literally bin off all 3 of these restrictions, and even then Stellar Terra type would be fine, it would be good, it might be used more, but it still wouldn't be broken. And I feel like they put all these nerfs on it, or these restrictions, as a way of trying to not make it broken, but it was never broken anyway. And pretty much the only cool mechanic about Stellar is Terra Blast Stellar is super effective against terrestrialized Pokemon. That's cool, I like that, but that's about it. And I will say quickly before I move on, the only Pokemon that did the Stellar Terra type justice was Terrapagos, because Terrapagos is the only Pokemon that actually, for those who don't know, when Terrapagos terrestrializes into a Stellar type, into its Stellar form, it actually becomes Stellar type, and it is no longer a normal type. And so it is neutral to everything, even fighting, and also neutral to Ghost. It's a very interesting thing, but it actually, Stellar is a type you can become, but only Terrapagos does so when it transforms into its Stellar form. And obviously, Terrapagos has a very wide move pool, so it can use all these different types. and 2, it gains a massive stat boost when it uses it, alongside a new ability, Terraform Zero, which is quite unique. So I like the way it was sort of like explained in the game's lore. I think Terrapagos is the only Pokemon that does it justice. But outside of that, yeah, definitely a disappointment for sure. Although I will say the Terra Crown, whenever you do Terrestrialize Interstellar, is absolutely beautiful.
Well, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because like it almost feels like the whole idea of Terra Stellar was just made specifically as a gimmick for Terrapagos. So it's like, you know, it makes sense that Terrapagos would, you know, it would be cool for it and it would work for it. But I think I do agree with you, and I think this is probably a little bit of a one of the larger issues that I have with the way that Gen 9's been managed. Not that I have too many complaints, but one of them is that it just feels like they're so, by they I mean like the Pokemon company, whoever's making this stuff and, you know, making the decisions, they seem so afraid of making something that's like too broken or too overpowered. They seem like too worried about, you know, making something like that they're like going so far in the other direction, if you know what I mean. And that's kind of like,
and then they proceed to make
like
Miraidon.
Yeah, there's that too, you know. So it's like, I don't know.
Don't take me wrong. I freaking love Miraidon, but they hella overtuned that thing. Go on, Emerald.
Right. In my sense, it kind of reminds me of like Arceus plates when it's like designed for specifically one Pokemon. Like every other Pokemon, when they try to use it, they just boost their moves by 1.2. But Arceus, it becomes a whole new type and it gets the boost and its judgment becomes that type kind of thing. But then Terrapagos is like it's the whole new ability that cancels out the weather and the terrain and all that. It gets the new stellar type. But when I originally heard about stellar type, I was thinking, oh, they're finally going to do it. They're going to make the type that's every single type at once, and it's only going to be weak to rock.
Oh yeah,
But
that's a lot of people
like,
were speculating.
no.
Yeah,
I was like, man, and then I was like, well, at least maybe it'll have some cool offensive stuff. But then the fact that it's only boosted by 1.2 one time, you could have made it to where it's at least permanent. I mean, Ogerpon has that, for crying out loud. I mean, 1.2 isn't even that bad. It's like an expert belt boost, you know, and you're spending your Terra on that. And so the fact that it's only one time, the only other use for it is for contrary Pokemon like Enamorus and Malamar,
which doesn't even feel intended.
No, that's just like an unintended side effect, I think, of the or an oversight on their part.
Yeah,
I know. So that's the only other real ways you can use it. Or if you're in draft, let's say, and I'm not even sure if anybody's trying to do this. Maybe they have tried, but it didn't work out. Where they have the stellar Terra type, and they save it for when their opponent Terras, so that they can take out their opposing Terra captain.
I don't think anyone's tried to do that.
Well, not here anyway.
No.
Brandon, your thoughts on Stellar, if you have some?
Well, first and foremost, has anyone won that one thing in the BHDL yet?
Nope. That role is still up for grabs 2 seasons later.
Woohoo.
For those of you that don't remember, if you have a Terra, the only thing you have to do is have a Terra Stellar Pokemon and get 2 kills in a game with it, and you get a.
Actually, yeah, it's funny you should say that, to bring that up, because like I actually had a plan for making that happen, because there's one Pokemon that I was planning on drafting that I was going to assign as a Terra captain and make it specifically Terra Stellar, and I didn't get to draft it, so unfortunately it didn't happen.
Did it get sniped?
I don't know if it's a snipe or not, because like it was something, I guess, that I was hoping to get like later, and it went earlier than I'd hoped it would, and so it just, you know, didn't happen. But you know, I almost want to tell you guys what it is, but I almost don't want to tell you what it is, because I don't want to give my thoughts away. But
saving it for a future season, I see you.
They perhaps. So screw it, I'll just tell you, it's Electros.
Oh, okay.
Terra Stellar Electros, it retains its 0 weaknesses to everything. So that's my strategy that I came up with. You heard it here first.
It does have a good amount of coverage.
It does.
Yes. Yeah. I honestly thought you were going to say Chinchino for some reason.
Nope.
All right, I think it's time we're going to move on. Well, before I do that, do any of you guys have a topic you want to talk about? Should we move on to some viewer suggestions?
I do have a big thought that I want to share with you guys. My laptop finally rebooted after 45 minutes. So there you go.
I can make cuts. Do you want to quickly switch?
Nah. It's fine. It's good.
All right. So, all good. Emerald, Brandon, any
other than that,
suggestions?
no. You guys?
No.
Yeah, nothing specific.
All right. In that case, we are going to move on to our first viewer suggestion topic, and that one comes from The Best Not Really, who asks, what do we as commissioners for the draft league behind the scene? What goes on into getting a league started? And how do you guys set on organization, rules, creating the draft board, disagreements, etc.? So, as the owner of BHDL, I will get started on this one because it is quite the story. Obviously, I'll let you guys fill in a second as well. But let me take you guys a little while back to BHDL Season 3, which is the first season where I took this league over from the founder, that is Beardo. Shout out to you, Beardo. He's not in the call with us, but he's here in spirit. So, I'm gonna be honest, even though our first 2 seasons were by all accounts quite successful, there were definitely a few fundamental problems that I had with it, and at this point I had spectated quite a few high-level draft leagues on Pokemon Showdown and on YouTube, and there was quite a bit of things that I saw that our league didn't quite align with. The big thing that goes on behind creating a draft league is, yeah, like you said, the draft board and the rules. And the draft board in particular is what I want to talk about, because before when season 3 preparation started, I started out by myself, and before I'd even recruited these 3 lovely people here on my commissioner team, I went digging and I looked for a whole bunch of sample draft boards. And the draft board that you see and know today on BHDL obviously has been modified plenty by us, and plenty of Pokemon have been moved around. But when the Indigo Disc came around, I kid you not, for about 80% of the Pokemon in this game, I went digging and searched the average price that people put them on, and put it all on the draft board given to me by Frandy1234. Shout out to you, Frandy. And put it all out there. And that is not something I had to do again for Season 4, luckily. But that was one hell of a job. And it really made me appreciate all other sort of league organizers, if that makes sense. Because going through all that, like obviously, you know, Season 3 was the first season with the Indigo Disc. Lots of new Pokemon came around, the new Paradoxes, lots of legendaries, all the starters were back, tons of new moves were added, right, alongside a lot of other moves getting distributed again, like Flip Turn, Knockoff, alongside with new moves like Supercell Slam, you name it. And so it was a hell of a job, honestly, and I still remember that very vividly, because don't take me wrong, it was very, very fun to do, and obviously I was very, very passionate. It made me very excited for Season 3, but that was one hell of a task. And even then, obviously, the draft board I created was good, but even then we still moved quite a few things around, and obviously I also didn't quite know what we were going to do with Terra, so we also obviously had to move a bunch of Pokemon from the Terra captains. But that whole creating the draft board, that was one hell of a process, and that is what I personally do as the owner. And that also ties in with another small thing, which is just in general looking for a good dog. Like I said, we usually, thankfully here in the BHDL, we have Frandy, who is a very lovely person to talk to, and she has amazing spreadsheets that we can track our stats on and have draft boards and stuff. But even that's still quite a bit of work, and the documents don't always 100% work. So luckily, again, she is always on top of it, and she always fixes stuff whenever we need it. But yeah, that is for me definitely what I sort of what takes up my time for it as the owner. But obviously that's not everything, so if any of you guys want to take it away, why don't you talk a little bit about the rules? How do we come up with the rules for the league?
Yeah, so I think the key here, in my opinion, is building consensus, right? So it doesn't really work very well if you just have one person, you know, like without a team of commissioners. I don't think that works the best, because you don't get different ideas, different perspectives, that kind of thing. Because you can sit there and you can think all day about, you know, oh, this is this good, so it should cost this much on the draft board, or like, you know, oh, these rules make sense to me. But at the end of the day, you're only one person. You can only think about it in your one way. So I think it's important to have multiple voices that have different perspectives, kind of like government, to be honest with you, as funny as that might sound. You know, building a consensus between people that all have studied the game and for lack of a better word, know to some degree what they're talking about. So I think that's the most important thing, so that you can try to ascribe like, you know, fair point values to things when you're creating the draft board. As far as the rules go, a lot of the rules I think tie back to, you know, some of the Smugon rules, like, you know, the sleep clauses or evasion clauses or stuff like that, just like stuff that breaks the game. I think that's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, that you don't want any of that, because that just kind of kills the fun of the game. But I think that, you know, largely it's about building consensus, and that kind of feeds into the, you know, settling the disagreements. So we have a pretty straightforward system here, you know, when it comes to us, you know, building consensus about disagreements and decisions, and that's simply put majority rules. So like we're fortunate that there's technically 5 of us if you count Biridu lurking in the shadows. So there's the 4 of us plus him, that really kind of, you know, we vote on things, right? So like we'll all present our perspectives about, you know, oh, I think this Pokemon should be here because of this, or I think we should have this rule because of that, or, you know, I think this Pokemon should be able to Terra because of this, or this one shouldn't Terra because of that, you know, that kind of thing. And then if we don't convince each other, because, you know, there's been plenty of times, because we've spent a very sizable amount of time, I think the 5 of us, talking about where things should be on the draft board, and, you know, rules and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times we do get to the end of a discussion, and then we're all pretty much just like, yeah, you know, I think we all agree now, it makes sense, you know. But there's also a lot of times where we're like, no, we still don't agree, we have to take a vote on it, and if it comes down to it, you know, we have to vote on it, and majority rules. So, but I think it's important to have people who are making those votes and making those decisions that, you know, like I said, student of the game kind of mindset, and just want to have the most competitive, most fair, most fun environment out there that is possible. So that's kind of the perspective I come at it from.
For sure. That's also why I, you know, when I was given ownership of this league, the first thing I did was recruit a new team of commissioners, because previously the staff of BHDL was quite small. As a matter of fact, at season 1 it was only 2 people, so which might explain why there was quite a few, you know, questionable rules back then. It was a good time, it was a great time, but you know, not the most competitive league as far as rules go, I think.
What, Chen Pao is not competitive? What are you talking about?
That's exactly what I mean.
Nonsense.
Yeah. But yeah, so when we obviously we have so those are obviously the 2 big things that come together, and they take quite a bit of time. There is a lot of you know, for those who don't know, there is a little commissioners channel that most of the coaches cannot access, and there are heated discussions that go on behind the scenes there about Pokemon and rules and stuff. But you know, it is all at the end of the day to give everyone the most fun and competitive experience possible. Emerald or Brandon, if you want to fill us in a little bit, what do we like, if you guys want to explain a little bit, what was our thought process specifically, because we had quite a few big rule changes, right, but going into season 4 as well. Do any of you guys want to dive deeper into the fact that we switched from free Terra to set Terra types?
Right, yeah, well, I think that was... Oh, you go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I do know, like, we were trying to move towards, because I know, like you were saying earlier, seasons 1 and 2 wasn't as competitive as it could have been because of, like, certain rules, and I know, like, we were trying to move towards being more competitive, hence the reason we came up with the 3 Terra type change. And, you know, we are a democracy at the end of the day. We put it to a vote, and I mean, hey, people spoke. Even they wanted to try it out. And since I've been doing some drafts outside of the BHD, I was kind of already used to that. But I do think it was pretty. I feel like it was pretty. I'm pretty glad that we ended up doing that this season. I feel like it definitely added to the competitiveness of the league.
Completely agree.
And
yeah, I was a little skeptical at first. I will say I was kind of skeptical at first of the fixed Terra thing, but I think by the end, by when it was all said and done, I kind of came to the conclusion of, you know, this is not so bad.
Especially when you consider, like, everybody's playing in the exact same environment as you, so it's like the same amount of prep you put into it, they have to do the same. And then I do feel like when we had Open Terra, that did just make things very, I'm gonna say, I don't know if uncompetitive is the word, because I do feel like certain things, certain situations, it's creative, but then your opponent has absolutely no counterplay. So I'm very bad when I'm trying to like debate on something's like creative or just uncompetitive. But yeah, back in the day, it was crazy. It was crazy out here. What do you think, Emerald?
Yeah, I think that, because I was wondering how it was. I'd been used to the fixed Terra for a little bit in UNPL, but then having it over here, I will say I feel like a lot of my matches, even though they were limited to 3 Terras, I was sometimes still surprised by the Terras that they went with. So it still had a little bit of like prediction elements, even in prep, that didn't necessarily play out, just like with free Terra. But we also changed the rules through level 100 instead of level 50 for Pokemon.
Mhm.
And I know that for a lot of folks there that make their mons in game organically, it puts a little bit more. I have to put in some more effort to get those mons to level 100, which I understand. I had to grind up against a bunch of. Well, actually, I think I just got a bunch of the level candies and pretty much went through all my resources and did all
You
that.
and me
to get
both,
up to
man.
level 100. Yeah.
You and me both.
so-
I burned through that bag of candy to get those Pokemon to level 100.
But hey,
Yeah, but at least once I had it,
That
they were
a lot.
good to go if I wanted to use them like that, or I could just go
Good
back
to go unless you want to make a transaction, right?
Yeah, for real. I made a lot of those, so I was like, man. But my Zangoose, I think I don't know what I did. Pretty sure I just had honestly, I think I just started going through just rare candies instead of the XP candies to get that thing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that having that the roles that are involved in level 50 versus level 100, the fact that they can make it, even if it's a slight difference, it can be all the difference in terms of, I feel like there's been a lot of games where, sometimes it came down to a role. It looked like the Jolteon versus the Palafin. I feel like there was a lot of close calls where level 50 might have changed, or maybe it wouldn't have. I can't remember.
Yeah. It's
all things like that where we on Pokemon Showdown and standard things is we use level 100. Of course, VGC they do use level 100, level 50, but in singles the standard is level 100. So I think just standardizing that was a good call, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm personally, like, even though, I don't have much to say on the aspect of, having to train up your mons, because I will admit I do gen my Pokemon from week to week. If I had to do it legit, I would be here all day, and I just do not have that time. But I will say, as someone who's also been playing a lot of just, general competitive Pokemon which plays out at level 100, I can really see why we do that in singles. And because you'd be shocked if you actually do some research into it, how much of a difference it actually makes, because in a lot of times, to put it into perspective, whenever you have a roll on a damage, like on a damage roll, right? And that damage roll is a 20% chance to one-hit KO the opponent at level 100. That is an 80% chance to one-hit KO at level 50, approximately. So, something like that happening is very common, and that fundamental change is a big deal, and a much bigger deal than I think. I don't think enough people realize that. I don't think level 50 is like flawed per se, but I do. Well, actually, I do. I'm gonna be honest, I do. But
all right then.
It's like
180.
I do think, like, I don't think it's like a criminal offense to have level 50 in your draft league. Of course not. But I do definitely think that level 100 was the right call, and it was definitely not as impactful as the change to set Terra types, I will say. As far as like in making a difference and making it more competitive and whatnot. But I do think that that was another change that I really enjoyed this season. Me personally, I really like the set Terra types. I thought it was it just eliminated a lot of deadly guessing games, and there's a lot of games that I can recall from BHDL seasons past where there were just deadly 50-50s of people having a Terra captain in and then they guessed the Terra type wrong, and then they lost the game. I have myself lost games with that. I've also won games because of that. My dear friends, this man Emerald Miner in the cold waters right here lost a 7-game winning streak because he guessed the wrong Terra type on my Iron Leaves. That's the effect that can have. So
yeah, I will say, I think looking back on that game, I think I could have made some better plays even before that. That cost me the game.
Yeah,
but yeah, definitely that too.
It's still just the fundamental, right? You were expecting Terra Ground, so you didn't sludge bomb with your Enamoros, and then I Terra into fighting, get a Trailblade, get a Swords Dance up, boom, game's done. So, and that's, I'm gonna be honest, that's also why Pokemon like Iron Leaves and Sandy Shocks were so broken back then. And yeah, obviously even low tier Terra captains as well, you know, like in Season 3 we had some, my Torterra had some pretty crazy stats, and as Gyarados absolutely went in a lot of games. So yeah, it was definitely you know, big party, big creativity, but perhaps not as competitive as it could have been. Even though the sets, again, by all accounts, were like Anna's Terra Normal Flail Gyarados was freaking next level. I can't even be mad I lost to that. That was awesome. But you know, at the end of the day, it's also like I can't reasonably expect to see that coming. You know, so it's a bit like if I'm not prepared for it, I might just lose the game on the spot. And like, even though by all accounts it is, you know, amazing for an opponent to come up with a set like that and make it work, I feel like it's also a bit, you know, it's definitely a bit of an added element when the opposing coach can be in a position where it's like, well, I couldn't really done anything about this because there's no way I realistically saw this coming. So, and funnily enough, at least for me, when it comes to predicting my opponent's Terra types, and this might be because of my round 1 pick, you know, my dear Palafin, but whenever I played against someone that had either Terra Water or Terra Grass available on their Terra captains, it was always Terra Water or Terra Grass, because you want to restrict that Palafin as much as you physically can. So for me, that guessing it was very easy. Like Raymond's Blaziken, knew it was Terra Water. Emerald's Cryogano, knew it was Terra Water. Cap's Mudsdale, knew it was Terra Grass. Like, it was not difficult to guess at all. But that might have also been because, you know, that's how big of a threat Palafin is. But I really enjoyed that change, personally. Anything else you guys want to add?
We also decided to go with low tier Terra.
Oh yeah,
season.
We did proper low tier
I think
Terra.
That was cool to be able to, because back in Season 1 we had freaking Terra Hoopa Unbound and stuff like that.
Oh god, yeah. Terra Regidrago.
So,
shout out to the best.
Oh wow, I forget we had all that. So yeah, I think trying to limit that makes it a little bit more competitive. I will say though, I'm in a high tier Terra league right now, so I'm gonna try to see the difference and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I do. We've never really been, I guess, a high tier Terra league. We've always been like mid to lower, but I do like that. I think we're in the better situation, in my opinion, because it does kind of make things a little more dicey when you're contending with those really big powerhouses that can Terra. But I think it also, and we talked about this when we were making these rules, I do really think that it helps motivate people to draft lower tier and lower point value Pokemon, so you give those lower Pokemon an advantage to them, because, you know, if you look at the draft board, everybody's going to draft, like, you know, the heavy hitters, like the big, like, whatever your top level point Pokemon are, everybody's going to draft those anyway, right? But, like, you know, when it comes down to it, you're giving those lower tier Pokemon, those lower point Pokemon, more viability, so it's like incentivizing people to still be creative and draft, you know, more evened out teams. So I do think that's a good thing.
For sure. I do really like the way that the lower tier Terra kind of puts those low tier Pokemon on the same level as some more powerful Pokemon and makes them able to keep up because of how powerful Terrestrialization is. And this season we actually saw, in my opinion, one of the healthiest mixes of, you know, people's round 1 picks doing really well, and also Terra captains. Like, obviously we have stuff like My Palafin, Beanot Sneasler, those ones obviously did really well this season, or at least in Season 4. But then we also have, you know, Stefan's Diancie, Arcaniner's Inteleon. I'm looking at the kill board right now.
Raymond's Lantern.
Yeah, Raymond's Lantern also. That's a very good one, actually, because that one was incredible defensively. Also really, really creative use there. I freaking love the way Raymond piloted Lantern this season. But also, you know, Beardoo's Kilowattrel, if I can pat myself on the back, my Delphox, Abomination's Jolteon. All these mons put in so much work, and it's like you never see these mons. You know, no one in their right mind is going to bring a Delphox or a Kilowattrel or whatever you have to an overused game, you know, and that's definitely, in my opinion, one of the biggest beauties of draft. I would absolutely...
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not in my right mind then, because I do bring all that stuff to OU. But continue.
Now, see, like that, but that's fine, and like, don't take me wrong, so do I every now and then. But if you're playing on like
It's
high
not
ladder,
competitive. I understand. It's not competitive.
yeah, you can definitely bring one of them.
Yeah,
like
right
there
there
are,
with you, Miror.
if you can definitely bring like one or two of them, and the team like can still be good in high ladder. Like there was someone who peaked top 5 on the ladder with Pseudo Wudo and Mimikyu on their team, which is incredible.
Yes.
I freaking love that. But and there's also plenty of people that have made other cool mons work. But at the end of the day, obviously, you're not going to be able to like bring half a team that's not OU and expect to win. Like that's very, very rare. It does happen on occasion. There's also someone who literally got to OU like top 10 I think, or top 20 with no OU Pokemon on their team. It was all like UU. But that takes some crazy like metagame knowledge. That's not going to be possible for like the average battler. Like I couldn't do that for sure. I could never do that. But in this, again, it really levels the playing field and it lets those Pokemon shine. However, I will say, I would absolutely love to at least experience it once, to have like a league. And I'm not saying we should do that in BHDL necessarily, but like, there's these Smogon leagues out there that let things like Raging Bolt and Iron Moth Terra, and I would like to experience that myself one day. I think it'd be chaos. It'd definitely be like for fun. But it's definitely abusing and getting the most out of this broken mechanic that is terrestrialization. But it would be hella fun to do once, I think, especially because
you say that now, but I think 9 weeks later you may be singing a different tune.
Oh, that's very much a possibility. But at the same time, you also get to abuse it. So like if I get to have a free Terra, if I get to have a free Terra Raging Bolt, like bro, sign me up.
Fair enough.
Assuming you can beat Roller to it.
Oh yeah, that's true. He would always draft that thing in round 1.
That'll be yeah.
All right. Let me quickly pull up the next. Let's move on to the next viewer suggestion, which is going to be. Let's see if I can pull it up here. That is going to be a suggestion from Lucario Man that says, what do you guys think of the different types of formats that we have in competitive Pokemon, ranging from singles to doubles and also national decks on Pokemon Showdown? And how would you, well, I guess we could start with that one. And also, how would you compare draft leagues to traditional Smogon and VGC formats? So let's start off with the first one. What do we think about singles, doubles, and also the difference between in-game and national decks? For those who are unfamiliar, national decks is a Pokemon format that is only playable on Pokemon Showdown, and it is basically the same as Scarlet and Violet, except every Pokemon that was cut from the game is legal, every move that was cut from the game is legal, which includes things like Hidden Power and Pursuit, and also all of Terrestrialization, Mega Evolutions, and Z moves are legal.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't play on Showdown, so I've never played national decks. From what I've heard and seen of it, it just sounds like an absolute mess, to be completely honest with you, because it's just basically just everything that's ever been in any Pokemon game is just on the table, right? So
it is, yep.
Like, yeah, so that just seems like way unmanageable in my personal opinion. I want to say that I think it's kind of ironic for me to hear those words coming out of my mouth, because I remember when Sword and Shield were released, when Pokemon made the jump to the Switch, and we found out that we were no longer going to be getting like a full decks, like the national decks wasn't going to be a thing anymore. They were going to be cherry picking Pokédexes from here on out. I was a big critic of that. I hated it. I thought it was stupid, because I wanted to have access to everything.
That's the reason I didn't buy the game.
Yeah, well, there you go. I understand that. Trust me, I really understand that. But looking back on it, and now, several years later, I can honestly say I understand why they did it, and I don't fault them for it anymore, because it's just the Pokemon as a franchise has evolved to the point that there's just so much stuff. Like, there's so many Pokemon, so many moves, alternate forms, gimmicks, like these past 4 generations, a new gimmick every generation. Like, it's just an absolute mess to try and throw all that together, I think. So I do think they ended up making the right call. Sure, you have the downsides, like you don't have your Alakazams and your Agrons in this game, unfortunately, but But I think all in all, it's just, it that has to be the way it is at this point in the lifespan of the franchise of Pokemon. It just has to be that way. As far as the formats go, I myself primarily play the Smogon singles, which I know is pretty drastically different from doubles, because I think the main difference in all the formats, right, is just what you have to work with when you're comparing national decks, but also like what's good is different depending on interactions, right? So like in doubles, as I understand, and I don't play too much doubles, but I have played some VGC in doubles. I think it's mainly just a case of you want to build Pokemon that support each other so that the synergy is more important in those situations. To have like a weather setter, terrain setter, or Pokemon with moves or abilities that can complement each other. In singles, obviously there is that, to a degree there's that synergy, but it's not quite the same. But yeah, I do. I would also say then when it comes to draft, I guess we'll get to that maybe a bit later. But I think the main difference for me anyway between all those formats in Draft League is that you get to see what's coming, right? Like when you're going into a battle with someone and you just say, you're having an OU battle with somebody, for example, hypothetically they could bring anything OU and lower to that game. So you don't know what to expect, versus if you are playing in a draft league, okay, these are my opponent's 10, 11, 12 Pokemon on their draft board. This is all they can bring. These are their Terra Captains. So you're very well prepared for what could come in those situations. So there's a lot more, I think, thought that goes into prepping specific Pokemon and moves and strategies to counter specific Pokemon moves and strategies, versus when you're building in any of those other formats, you're just kind of like, okay, what's generally the best thing I can do, like for the tier as a whole, what's the best thing I can do. So I think that's really the big difference.
Yeah, I'll say for me, I remember being with my friend on the bus to school or coming back home from school, and we were just talking like, there's like, this was like after 4S, and it was like, man, there's like 720 something Pokemon right now, and we were thinking, well, what happens when we get to 1,000? Are they just gonna stop making Pokemon? Like, they can't just keep doing this forever. And so we were already thinking like they're gonna have to either make some cuts, which they did, or just like go back and repeat and just start making remakes. And so the fact that they had to make some cuts, I understand. Of course, I was very disappointed when I found that out in Sword and Shield. It was a little earlier than expected, but we could see it coming, because in Sun and Moon they didn't have a national dex. You could get all the Pokemon, you can have all the Pokemon in the game, but you couldn't register them to the dex like you could in X, Y, and ORAS. And so for me, I just kind of wish, give me a game. I don't need the whole story of the game. Give me a side game like Battle Revolution or whatever, where I can have all the Pokemon, where I can have my Megas and my Z moves and all that, and let me play that separately. You know what I mean? And they kind of have that on Showdown, which is nice. But it's just like, well, I don't really want to learn that meta if I can't really record a Wi-Fi battle with it. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of more my deal. So I've kind of stayed away from that. VGC though, VGC is a lot of fun, because just like Beanard said, this energy, you get to use those abilities that are usually useless in singles and finally make something out of them, like me and my friend did with Charger Bug at the Orlando Regionals. And so I just think that VGC is pretty cool, because there's this whole other universe. There's this with all the Wolfies and the what's his name, Moxie Boost and all those guys, and it's like they play a whole different game than we do. And the Pokemon that they use, like, a lot of them can't even be used in singles. And so I just like to go over there sometimes and play with some of those mods. And the cool thing is that they've been changing up the regulations like every 3 months or so, and they keep on having to adjust their teams. So I think that's pretty fun. Meanwhile, over here in Draft, like Beanard said, we get to have the prediction element every week. Every season our teams change, and every week the opponent we're facing changes. So it's kind of like we get to have a new experience each time, which I like.
Yeah, it's definitely like there's also there's definitely a drastic difference in the game we play. Like it's really interesting, definitely to me, how you have Smogon 6v6 singles and VGC 4v4 doubles. It's still Pokemon at the end of the day, but they are such like vastly different metagames. We have a very good infamous example is we have Incineroar, which for us is an NU Pokemon. It's decent, it's good, it's good in draft as well, it has its use, good little pivots, good nice defensive typing, Intimidate, always good, Knockoff as well, high attack stat. It's a good mon, but it's still never used. You're not going to bring it to an OU game. It's just good, but it's nothing crazy, right? VGC on the other hand.
Anna would like to have a word with you, sir.
Well, I think even Anna's going to agree. I think even Anna's going to agree that Incineroar is not Dragon Ball. But like Incineroar in VGC, like people have been having nightmares, hallucinations, seizures over. They look out their window and they see this Pokemon in their courtyard. They go to brush their teeth and like freaking they look in the mirror and they see Incineroar. They take out the washing machine and the damn thing's sitting in the washing machine. Like this water's everywhere. And
the Rotom washing machine?
Yeah. Sure, go
I
ahead.
Hope so.
But what I'm trying to get at is Incineroar is a freaking stuff of nightmares over there, and it's like it's still Pokemon. Like its stats don't change, its ability doesn't change, but it's still like such a drastic thing. And obviously, like there's many different examples of this, but Incineroar I feel like is a poster child of this difference. And it's like I think False Swipe Gaming even made like a video that's like why the format is everything, like, and they call it the Incineroar theorem. But yeah, like I just find it. Yeah, they got a lot of theorems, but that's one of the more interesting ones.
Very fair.
Yeah,
but, very fair.
As far as national decks goes, I'm gonna have to stop you a little bit, saying like it is too much. Like for sure, it is a lot of work to manage, right? But there is a very big council of like I don't know, God knows how many players, of like high level players that decide on what is allowed in national decks and what is not, and it's very carefully managed of pro players that really know what they're talking about. And the thing is, like in national decks, right, there's obviously like certain Pokemon get certain moves back, and it's actually I have played national decks a couple of times. I'm not a massive fan of it. I do just prefer like playing the actual game because most of the time whenever I play competitive Pokemon, I'm just like or like whenever I play on Showdown, I'm practicing for Wi-Fi battles. Or like thinking of teams. But like for example in national decks OU, right, King Gambit is banned because it gets knockoff in this thing, right? I think Roaring Moon is banned as well. There's a lot of mons that because they get certain moves back they get axed from the tier, and it actually makes like again I've played it a couple times. And with the way that they coded it as well, with like if your Pokemon if you are holding a Z Crystal then you can't Terra. If you're holding a Megastone you can't Terra. It honestly does make for a surprisingly balanced metagame, and like a lot of thought is put into it. I will say there are some anomalies that happen. For example, it is very funny how because of how popular national decks OU is, people see Mega Banette in there and they keep using it. Because they see it's OU by usage, and it's like, oh, the Mega Banette's really cool, I want to use this. But then it turns out Mega Banette is like an infamous noob trap, and it actually sucks ass in national decks OU. But because it's at the top of the list, people just keep putting it on their team, and they keep keeping it like its usage stays high enough for it to stay in the tier, which is hilarious to me.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah,
but I do love a good troll.
Yeah,
as you know,
Mega Banette is a freaking troll in the team builder, dude. It's hilarious, and like. Its ability is prankster, but you're the one getting pranked if you use it technically. But yeah, it is a very fun format. I do like playing it every now and then, but like Emerald said, I would definitely prefer it if we had like a sort of Battle Revolution-esque game where we can actually have cool animations and stuff, because that's the big thing about Showdown, right? There's no cool animations, there's no a lot of it is 2D or sometimes 3D sprites. And it's not, and obviously they can't have all the animations because they get sued by Game Freak. But it is by all accounts just a battle simulator, not a recreation of a Pokemon game. But
it's kind of like Showdown is like McDonald's, and the Switch games are like Five Guys.
That's an interesting.
Not that
analogy.
I don't love me. Not that I don't love me some McDonald's, but it's just
interesting analogy.
Quality's not there.
Yeah,
Brandon knows what I'm talking about.
So yeah, for me personally, I do find the difference between all of them very interesting. Me personally, I am also definitely very much a singles person though. I have pretty much like the first time I dipped into VGC was during the Regulation G, I think, with all the restricted legendaries. I played like 3 games of it and then called it a day. It was fun, I will say. I do have a lot of respect for VGC players and like how they make their teams and stuff, and how they adapt to the meta game that shifts every couple of months. Because that's the thing about Smoke on singles, right? The metagame itself doesn't change unless the game changes, unless a DLC comes out, unless a certain new Pokemon gets added to the game. Otherwise, outside of the player modifications with bans and whatnot, the concept stays mostly the same, which is fine, but it's definitely a different atmosphere. But yeah, I'm definitely much more of a singles guy. Again, I've played my fair bit of Pokemon Showdown Ladder. I've played a fair bit of Wi-Fi battles, obviously. I've even taken on the in-game Battle Stadium singles ladder. Now that's another rabbit hole we could talk about as well, which I don't want to, because I low-key think that especially is not a very good thing. But it was fun while it lasted, I guess. But yeah, I really love all these different kinds of Pokemon. The existence of national decks really is cool, just to kind of see, like, national decks is a what if thing, right? It's just what if these things were never removed from the game, and it's really interesting for me. And something that you may have noticed about me in general is I'm an observer. I love observing. I love watching things unfold. And yeah, national decks I think is a very interesting thing in that regard. I
did notice that you did say that on your Discord profile. It does say that, so I get it now.
Does
I
it?
get it?
Oh yeah. I had a thing for a long that said I observe, I do not judge. That's a quote of mine. Yeah.
I noticed.
Yep. But
I understood that reference.
Did you?
I did.
You mean like as in this one right now? Or did you actually understand like where the quote comes from?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I understood the reference to the quote, not the actual words.
Okay, I see you. Yeah, makes sense.
But I was also making my own reference for any Avengers fans out there, but that's okay.
Gotcha. So yeah, I do like it a lot.
Brandon, did you get to say anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna pass it along. I'll share my thoughts about draft in a minute, because we're gonna be talking about draft plenty. But yeah, that's kind of my thing on it. But yeah, Brandon, take it away. Sorry for stealing your spotlight.
No, you're good. Well, see, like Captain B, I have no experience with national decks, so I don't really know what to expect from it. But it does sound like it would be chaos in the sense of like building your team, because it's like when you have that many options, like how do you even try to narrow it down to 6 Pokemon? I don't even see how the heck you do that. But the people who do and are successful in it, hey, my hat's off to you. But I'm more of a singles guy. I mean, I have a little bit of experience with doubles. I kind of like doubles. It's definitely faster than singles, and I'm not gonna lie, it has a lot more hair ripping out moments than singles too. But it's the game we play. I just don't like it as I don't like it as much as I like singles, just because I don't really like So if anyone has watched a doubles game, one big part of doubles is protect. I'm the kind of guy, I like to just throw them hands and get it over with. So, when all these people are just protecting, I'd just be sitting here like, can we please get this over with already?
I understand how you feel.
Yeah.
Trust me, I do.
That is, for me, also the big thing that puts me off VGC, the protect spam. I understand, like, it's 100% a pretty competitive mechanic, and the guessing games go pretty hard, like the mind games, but that's not for me, personally.
It's a legitimate strategy, it just sucks to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm thankful for things like Urshifu and, and what's that other Pokemon called? Iron Boulder, who they look protect in the face and say, get this out the way. I don't care about it.
Yeah.
But RIP to them, because they're not even allowed in VGC anymore. So, yeah. But,
I was going to say, even Iron Boulder's axe right now in Regulation H, I believe.
Yeah, because he's a paradox.
Yep.
Oh, snap. Just Weevil's looking for OU battles. Who's down?
Oh, my.
Oh, is that?
Well,
oh.
But
I just got pinged from his server. That's why I had to throw it in there. It adds to the realism effect of the podcast experience,
Love it. And of course, we have to also acknowledge that there's always the obligatory no comment from Cobra.
Yes, absolutely. Has to happen.
He literally does that every single time someone asks for a battle. He just says no. I swear to God, this guy's chronically online sometimes.
Just a little.
Just like how every time someone posts their team in the Rate My Team, Scorpion comes out of nowhere just to say, this team sucks.
What do you mean, bro? My team building advice is unmatched.
That's a constructive criticism, they call that, I think, right?
Yes, that is constructive. I mean, okay. In my defense, right? I do it as a joke. I do it as an inside joke in the server, right? It's like a running meme over there. But in my defense, more than 70% of the teams that get posted there genuinely do suck. I'm sorry to say, but they're not very good.
Sometimes it's what you want to build things for fun.
Yeah, no, but, and I do respect that, and I'm not throwing any shit at this players, and that's why I don't bash the mons that they're using. But I just like saying for the meme, this team sucks.
Come on, you know, fun like the like what we were talking about the other day, the JFDL, the Just for Fun Draft League. You know.
Yeah, that's definitely what that stood for.
It did. That's why I didn't understand why you guys were so against it. Like it's the just fun draft league. So why wouldn't you want to have fun? I don't get it. But whatever.
Okay. Anyway,
there
is another viewer suggested topic which we can go over quickly, but I do want to, all of us get our turn in this, but I think we can keep this short and sweet. Comes from the man himself, Virdu, also known as Virdu from the Discord server. For you guys, I'll start off with this one and then you guys can go. What has been your favorite team overall throughout the 4 seasons? And I'll start off with this one. Me personally, I liked all my teams for sure. And when I was thinking about this question, it was definitely between seasons 3 and 4, which, surprise, surprise, the 2 seasons I did the best in. But it comes down for me between 2 things. Because in my season 3 team, I liked the Pokemon overall more. I had 2 of my favorite starters. I had Iron Valley, one of my favorite Paradoxes. I had Iron Crown. I had Thunderous Theory. And a lot of these mons I just love, even outside of draft or competitive as a whole. But in season 4, I feel like I had the most fun prepping. Because the main thing with season 4 is, to keep it short and sweet, I had 10 Pokemon, and in season 3 I had 9 Pokemon. Morgrim doesn't count. So it's really like, do I prefer the team that I had like more fun building with and that I thought was the best? Like, I do think my season 14 was the best team I've drafted yet, and surprise, surprise, it won the season. But again, with season 3, it's like there's just a whole bunch of my favorites on there, and that team was also so much fun to pilot. But I think, upon thinking about it, I do think my favorite team, despite everything, was my season 3 team. Because my season 3 team, like Iron Crown, Iron Valiant, Hisuian Samurott, Torterra, Thunderous Therian, Cyclozar, using all of those mons together and doing well with them. Like, it's almost like I was using my favorites, but they actually worked well together. And the fact that it worked as well as it did and it carried me to the finals, that was beautiful. And I don't even care Morgan was a part of it. Like, that was just, if anything, it did make prep a little bit more shallow, because it did mean I had 9 Pokemon instead of 10. But I freaking loved using all those mons together and making them shine all on the same team. And also the fact that Torterra, my favorite Pokemon of all time, was my kill leader, was a big honor. And also the final Pokemon that went down in the finals fighting for that championship. So yeah, my answer is going to be surprisingly, my season 3 team.
Well,
what do you think, Brandon?
Well, for me,
Season
it would definitely.
Are you going, Brandon?
Well, for me, it would definitely be my season 2 team. Albeit this team was constructed back when the rules weren't as strict as they were, and actually, strict might not be the right word for it. But y'all get the idea. This is back when we had a little bit of chaos, and that was like the first team that got me to a final, and that was also like a team that just let me know, like, okay, maybe we're figuring this draft thing out. Because my season 1 team, which is also the first draft I ever did, that was just it was a season, but yeah, definitely my season 2 team, especially since pretty much every mon I drafted got to do something. And I swear, ever since then, I just feel like it's been so hard to replicate a team that's like that one. Cause I just felt like the power and the bulk was just so perfectly balanced. and every Pokemon that was on the team was also offensively threatening, which is kind of just like my playstyle. I like hyper offense. And so having a team full of mons that you cannot just sit in front of, it was just really great. And it's also crazy that in one season I managed to get 2 Pokemon Terra banned. So sorry, Cresselia, sorry, Bisharp. And yeah, that was a pretty great season. I really wish I could have played Emerald, though. I really wish I could have played Emerald.
I wish we could have played that season too.
I imagine it was definitely a moment in history for the making for you when literally 1 week in you already had a 6-0.
What do you say, Emerald? What's your highlights?
I think definitely season 1 was probably my best team. I was somehow able to get Dragapult at number 12.
Oh yeah.
And then from there, I just feel like I got a very solid defensive core. I feel like I got to make use of the Ting Lu very well, and then even the Alolan Muck.
I finally saw the light on Ting Lu, bro.
Yep, absolutely.
God, that one is so freaking good.
Season 2 is a close run-up just because right after I got to use Dragapult, I got to use Iron Valiant. And I got to use that with mons like Ogerpon and Terra Toxtricity. And even the
just drafting all the high tier threats, you know?
Yeah. And so then after that, things started going downhill for me. I feel like even though my season 3 team was good, I think there was some key moments where I just choked with it. And I just didn't get to use it to its fullest extent.
Yeah, nice mirror
and then
move up,
season
bro.
4, we don't got to talk about season 4. But, maybe I'll be able to... Maybe I can go back to the start and then go back to that team. I mean, of course, I like drafting the good mons at first, but then I like to also get a lot. I've discovered the key, and I think I was talking with Brand about this. The key is also having the solid defensive Pokemon there to be able to switch in and take the hits for your offensive mons. And I feel like my season 4 team just didn't do that, so I'm trying to go back to that formula.
Yeah, I feel you there. I will say personally, I'm gonna I took this question a little bit differently than you guys did actually, because I thought there could be 2 possible answers here. So when I'm thinking about my favorite team of the teams that I've drafted in this league so far, I do think that I actually like my season 4 team, the most recent one, the best from a personal level, just because other teams, I'd say season 3 and season 1 are a close second, obviously, because I actually did equally as good with all 3 teams. But in the season 1 and the season 3 teams, there were some Pokemon on there that I'm not the most fond of, I guess I would say, on a personal level, Pokemon that I like. So Pink Urchin is a good example of this. Believe it or not, based on how good I've done with it and how many times I've drafted it, I actually don't really like Pink Urchin all that much, but it is actually, I acknowledge it's very useful, right?
Yeah.
So
I actually really liked your season 1 team, genuinely.
Well, thank you. I did as well. But there were some stuff. I'm almost struggling to think of a couple of the Pokemon I used, but there were a couple of things on there that I wasn't super duper fond of on a personal level. And like I said, it's really close between all 3 for me. But in the season 4 team, was just, I think there was really not one Mon on that team. I think the closest Mon on the team that I had to something that I wasn't super fond of was probably Indeedee. And it's just I needed that there anyway, so it's okay. But yeah, I think the season 4 team was just the personal favorite, just based on what was on there. Just a lot of Pokemon that I've used historically and like to use, and then some newer ones that I also quite like. But I also kind of took this question a second way too, of all the teams, not just yours. What were your favorites? And so we could
talk about that as well. Go on.
Yeah, I know we're already probably running long here, but that's okay.
We have officially passed the 1 hour mark, but this is audio entertainment. Let's just keep going for as long as we want.
Indeed. So yeah, I think the 2 teams that come to my mind, I don't really remember too much. Season 1 was a long time ago, although I will say I did like Emerald's team in season 1. I thought it was a really solid one. In season 2, I don't really remember much about that. So we'll leave it at that. That was my off season. So I don't really remember too much about the other teams, but in season 3, I actually really liked Anna's team a lot. The one that would eventually win it all, but I really liked the defensive synergy on that team that she created in season 3, and a lot of the Pokemon are stuff that I like as well personally. So that was a big one for me. And then this past season, in season 4, I actually really liked Al's team, Abomination's team, just because it was so well synergized and well rounded that it just, can't help but not like it, and it took them far, obviously semifinals. So but yeah, those are some of the other ones that I quite liked.
Gotcha. And if you guys want to go, or should I go? Like for favorite other teams.
Yeah, I think for me, some of my favorite opponents' teams was probably, like you said, Anna's in season 3, Owl's in season 4. But I really liked Randon's team in season 2, with the Terra Bisharp and the Terra Crust. Just so bulky, and just being able to have such offensive power with the Cinderace and the Urshifu. It was like the perfect match. And I will say I do have fond memories, even though it did beat me, of Scorpion's team in season 1 with the Terra Iron Leaves, just because there's not many other times you've been able to see that. So
the mascot, bro.
Yep.
And I remember liking I can't remember the entire team, but I do know I remember liking Icy Dudes season 2 team with the Ting-Lu, the Chi-Yu, the Toxapex.
That team was about the closest thing I think we've ever gotten to someone genuinely drafting Stall.
Yeah, why would you like that? What the hell, man?
It was definitely not Stall, but it was very close to it.
Yeah, and that's why I like it wasn't it wasn't Stall. It was close, but I don't know. It's it was a cool team for what it was. It was a cool team in those days.
It definitely had a kind of Stall-y structure, because a lot of Stall teams, right? They have lots of Pokemons. I think he had like Toxapex, Ting-Lu, stuff like that, and then he also had that one really fast mon that check things, like he's with the Hisuian Electrode. And I swear down, those defensive walls combined with the Hisuian Electrode, they did me in back then. Honestly.
And speaking of season 2, I also liked the Best Not Really's teams. I remember him having the let me see this. Well, he always has the Zoroark, that kind of like how I always have the Cinderace. You just expect it. I also remember him having the Delphox, the Florges. I want to say he had a Tinkaton around this time too. He had a pretty cool team back then. I remember he got all the way to the semis with it. But dang.
Yeah.
What would be my favorite team I've seen of someone else would probably have to be. This is a hard one. I don't know. Everybody makes pretty good teams. Like the consistency in the BHDL has grown so much over the last since season 1. Like everyone's just making better and better teams. It feels like.
Fair enough.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say that Enard's season 1 team was a big inspiration for my season 2 team with Halucha and Vicursion, so I do got to give that a shout out as well.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. As for me, I will say I also really liked both those teams that you just mentioned. I remember initially when we were initially done with the drafting process in season 1, I had a look at everyone's teams. And even though I acknowledge that, or at least like in competitive, very standard competitive, it's usually not that good. But I do love me some terrain play styles, and I actually have made a pretty successful electric terrain team for OU this generation, which I really liked. But yeah, Obinard's team in season 1, I really liked that one. I remember commenting on it, being like, "Oh, this team looks fun to pilot, if anything." Also because I'm a very, very big fan of Iron Moth. I'm glad that throughout all the seasons, people have been using that thing pretty well. As far as other memorable teams, again, I thought that Emerald Miner's team in season 1 as well, incredible, just very, very solid balance of Pokemon there. And I remember that team was easily the one that I had the most amount of headache trying to prep for it. As far as other teams go that I remember that were memorable,
well, I mean, all of Raymond's teams have been pretty crazy.
Of course, yeah.
Go.
Ironically enough,
because he won 2 times and almost came close.
Yeah.
Last time.
Though I will say, unironically, even though statistically wise, I think Raymond is BHCL's most accomplished player. I'm the second most accomplished player. he makes teams. Like, I don't think I would pilot any of Raymond's teams well. He has this way of playing. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I still can't really figure out how Ray makes his mons work as well as he does, because like, I acknowledge his teams are good, and especially in season 4 I thought his team was really, really good. But I'm just listening like, I don't think I would pilot this well, so let me see how he does with it. And he just comes up with these techs and these ways of dealing with his opponents, and I'm like, bro, that's crazy. Like, I respect that.
You know why that is, right?
Yeah.
You know why that is?
The Raymond difference, I guess.
No, because he has a PhD. He's a scholar, after all. So
of course.
He sees things in ways that other people don't.
Yeah. Well,
he's got the paperwork to prove it.
Well, even before he had that paperwork, bro, he was cooking with that Chen Pao. But yeah.
Well, maybe that's not the best example, because Chen Pao is Chen Pao, but I get your sentiment. Absolutely.
The team wasn't even carried by Chen Pao. That was Sandy Shocks, bro. Sandy Shocks.
Yeah.
To this day,
Sandy Shocks.
Sandy Shocks, I think, to this day has been like the Pokemon that's gotten the most KOs in one season still. Yeah. Very quickly, Necrozma as well. Necrozma did really well in the hands of the best, I think it was. Yep. First, quickly, as for other memorable teams, I really liked Pokemaster's team this season, actually, with the Meowscarada, the Iron Moth, Skarmory, like the sort of Gen 3 OU defensive core of Skarmory and Swampert. I really like those mons. Frostlass and Hydreigon, 2 mons that were together on my season 1 team as well. I love those 2 together. And again, with the Alolan Raichu, the Iron Moth, and the Pink Urchin, bro. I love my terrain structures, so...
See, the thing is, if you're gonna, I have to. Here's my bit of free advice for the future, and I may even take my own advice. But when you make a terrain strategy, the best way to do it with Pincurchin, in my opinion, is you got to have 1 physical, 1 special, and Pincurchin.
Yeah.
So that was the one slip, I think, that for Pokemaster was that they were, his Alolan Raichu and his Iron Moth were both special. To feed off the end of the terrain.
Yeah, his team was very especially offensive as it is. Like, the only physical attackers really were Hitmontop and Meowscarada. That was it. I guess Swampert to an extent too, but that mod is more defensive. But yeah.
But he only picked up Pink Urchin because we told him to anyway, or suggested it anyway.
That's true. But sometimes you just gotta help each other. But yeah, no, I absolutely love Chris's team from this season. I also thought Beardu's team from this season was really, really cool. And speaking of Beardu, another team that I think is very memorable was just his Season 3 team, because that was his first time picking up Tyranitar and the Sand Core. And I remember being like during that drafting process, right? Because obviously he had first pick back then, so I was really interested to see like what he was going to do with it. And I freaking loved watching Beerus battles in Season 3, dude. He used that core so well, and I could tell how passionate he was about using Tyranitar. And obviously, this man was committed. You gotta understand, this guy had first pick, right? He had the potential. He could have picked Iron Val, he could have picked Dragapult, chose not to, went to Excadrill, and just committed to it from that moment on. So yeah, I think those are some of my memorable teams there. And yeah, I think obviously no spoilers or anything, but I think I would definitely want to draft some kind of terrain core later. What kind of, I actually have no idea. I couldn't even tell you myself right now, but I freaking love those structures. And historically they haven't even done that bad, because they're big threats. They enable some Pokemon that are already good, and they make them even better.
Indeed.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next viewer suggested thing, which is, this is another good one that I think we can all answer on. What do you think is the most important, it comes from Beardo as well, by the way, I forgot to mention that. What do you think is the most important aspect to have in consideration when building a draft team? Just one thing. It can be anything, but just one thing. What do you think is the most important? Like if any one team has everything else that a team needs except this one thing, what would you say is that one thing, and make you say like, oh, this team is great, but it's missing this one team, so I think it sucks?
It's type balance. It's got to be type balance. Number one, definitely. This is why, and the first thing that came to my mind when you said this was HIM's team from Season 4, is that we were looking at that team when we were doing the power rankings, and everybody wanted to say it was an S tier team, but you're just looking at the type imbalance. There were like so many weaknesses to, I think, Ghost and Ground or Ice, or there was a few types that there were just these glaringly obvious weaknesses on the team, and for that reason and that reason alone, I don't think any of us could could justify ranking it as an S tier team, despite it having pretty much everything going for it. Other than that, so I think tight balance has to be the most important thing, because if you don't have a tight balance team, if your opponent can just spam like earthquakes or spam ice beams or whatever and just kill you, then it's just all the other stuff in the world isn't going to matter without that. So that's the answer for me.
Gotcha.
For me, I think it's I think your opponent has to have. I feel like a lot of people get sponges and walls confused. So your team could have sponges, but it has no walls. And I feel like you need to have like things on your team that can take the hits. Because even though a lot of people don't like this, Pokemon is a game of switching out. It's just part of the game. And I just feel like something else teams need. Not necessarily speed, but just a way to hit first. Whether it's priority or just having speed in general. Like, I know when I build teams, like, to me, one of the biggest things I look for is speed. Because I always want to be the first one to go. Because, well, if you're second, as we know, anything can happen. But that's just what I feel teams need the most, like a good bulk and speed. What do you guys think?
Can you define for me real quick, like a sponge is a sponge like an Azumarill or like a Great Tusk that can eat the hits but can't recover, versus a wall is like something like a Toxapex that can easily recover off the damage?
Yes. As a matter of fact, yes. So, like, a sponge to me is like a Pokemon. It can come in and it can take a few hits, but either A, it lacks recovery, or B, is like you come in and take a few hits, but that initial hit kind of already has you with your legs wobbling.
I think we would call those tanks in my mind. Like that's the terminology I'm more familiar with, is like tank versus wall. Like tank would be something that it can take a couple hits, but then it's gonna die. Versus wall is just like it could take if you have like a good special wall, for example, it could take like a million special hits and it's not gonna die.
Yeah,
okay, that's what I thought.
Because, like, for example, I would view like what's a mon I would view as a sponge. I would view, like, even though it has, that's respectable SPDF, but I would view Sylveon, for example, as a sponge. Even though it does get Wish, I would view it as a sponge, just because, to me, yeah, but something like Florges, at least in regards to depth, I would view Florges more so as a wall.
Yeah.
Goodra, by that definition, would also be a sponge or a tank.
Yeah.
Could be, yes.
My personal favorite, or my captain there. I think it that specifically to me, it kind of falls like in a like a gray area where it's kind of a little bit of both, because like its SPDF is so high that it can take a lot of special hits, but it's probably more on the tank end of the spectrum. I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, Goodra is a bulky attacker, right? Because it's like it has really great special bulk, especially with an Assault Vest. It can take special hits really well. But even despite that, it still has enough, it takes the hits well enough to invest in its special attack and also use its high offenses to dish out hits. And its goal is to just like it'll take your hit and then hit you back hard in return.
Indeed.
And I freaking love Goodra. It's not really a mon that I would ever consider drafting myself, unless it's the Hisuian one. But I really like Goodra. For me personally, what I think is the most important thing, I do think all of the things you guys mentioned very important. I'm gonna sort of side with Brandon here a little bit, but for me personally, the number one thing that's important is speed tiers, just speed tiers, because I do think type balance is important, but I have actually seen very, very offensive teams by like offense specialists dominate leagues that had that had pretty poor type management. Like I recently saw, I think Visit which might be a very familiar name for a lot of people. He recently won a draft league with a Sun team, and that Sun team had no walls whatsoever, and a bunch of random Pokemon like Executor, Skuntank for a little bit of defensive purpose, And then apart from that, it was mostly just Talk Hole and a billion paradoxes, like Sandy Shock, Slither Wing, Walking Way, Gouging Fire. He had all of those. And and not only did he win the league, but he freaking dominated with it. And his Gouging Fire had a stupid amount of KOs. So, like, I absolutely agree. I personally could not pilot a team like that well at all. I think it takes a lot of skill. And I do think the more consistent team, like, again, the reason why these teams work well is because the person is a specialist, not because everyone would do well with it. So I do think type balance is very, very important, and I would absolutely do that. But for me, speed tiers are the most important thing, because I have seen, at least from my observations, the teams that perform the worst, both in BHDL and outside of BHDL, are the ones that have big gaps in their speed tier, or where their highest speed tier is low. And I actually have a good amount of experience with this in season, or like myself, because back in season 1 I did not have any kind of view on my team. I was very new to draft. I didn't know what made a good team or not, and I think my team turned out okay. But I did notice when prepping for opponents, my fastest Pokemon was Frostlass at base 110, and and in every single game there was at least one Pokemon on the other side that easily outsped me, and some of them could even run attack boosting natures and be absolutely fine. And frickin' bro, I made one transaction this season, but the moment I traded away a Magnezone for Barraskewda and my speed tier went up to 136, that was a moment of enlightenment, bro. That a whole new world just opened for me. Like, oh, I can be the one to revenge kill people now. And again, this was Barraskewda, no rain, no Terra, and it's still. It was so important for me, like for my team as a whole, and being able to like revenge kill things and provide that backbone. And I could tell you with full confidence that the teams who have drowned in the bottom half of our standings, in BHDL specifically, have been the ones that lack proper speed tiers. Now, the big lacking thing there is if your highest speed tier is not very high. I do think that your highest speed tier should at least be 115, and ideally you have like a bunch of Pokemon sort of around that. Obviously not, not saying your whole team should be fast, but I do think having 1 or 2 Pokemon above like 115 or 110 is good. But also the big gaps, and that's, I love Abomination's team as much as the next guy. I do think his team was actually the best in season 4, or at least one of the best for sure. I really liked his team, but he himself really noticed it between Chinchino and Great Tusk, his second and third fastest mon. There was a huge gap, and because of that, a whole bunch of Pokemon, most infamously Ogerpon, but a bunch of other Pokemon as well, were able to run attack boosting natures, and that made it, despite how tanky his team was, still surprisingly difficult to wall some mons. Again, Ogerpon is the biggest one that comes to mind, with its 110 speed tier, can easily run Adamant Nature and still outrun Great Tusk and below. So yeah, like, again, type balance important, a lot of other things important, but for me, good speed tiers, both in not having big gaps and also just having your highest one be just quite high, is the big thing. And if a team for me, as I mentioned earlier, if a team for me ticks all of the other boxes that I think a good draft lead team needs, but the speed tiers are bad, then I think it's not a good team. And again, the reason why Abomination's team is the exception there is because he had a Chinchino and a Jolteon that are both above one, like they're both 115 and 130, which is, you're not going to be outspeeding those very easily. And definitely the problem of gaps is nowhere near as big as your highest speed tier being low. But yeah, for me, speed tiers is the big thing that makes a team weaker if it lacks it.
I think you guys pretty much hit most of the big ones. I think the only other thing that I could think is making sure that you've got some priority on your team.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just in case as an insurance policy, because sometimes they're going to have some sweeper and it's going to pop off, and then you got to have something to be able to come in and revenge it. Like
absolutely,
and Verdamons and the anything like that, Dragon Dancers.
Yep. All right. I think that's going to lead us into a quick intermission to ask you guys if, before we move on to the next viewer suggestion, do you guys have any other topics you quickly want to bring in, just as a filler? Because I don't. We already talked about Terra. That was my thing.
Yeah, I don't really have too much else to broach the subject at this point.
All right. In that case, we are going to move on to a question from the notorious HIM, which I thought was very interesting. We already talked about...
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Wait.
The notorious HYM. Sorry.
Oh my God! You scared me there for a second. All right, go on.
Yeah, the notorious HYM. He asks.
Once you've said it once, you can never go back. It's now it's a meme. It's ingrained in everyone's mind for all eternity. So it is what it is.
Fair enough. I'll carry
There's
that.
no going back.
Fair enough. I'll carry that. Let's see. He asks a couple of these points we touched on already, but the most important one. This is the one that was actually related to in battle. How do you guys sort of gauge? How do you guys feel your opponent out in a couple of first turns? How do you sort of control the flow of the game? And how is what is your personal view, and maybe even advice to other people on pushing the pace of the battle in your favor?
Emerald, you didn't get too much of a chance to talk before. What do you say?
Well, for me, I just feel like whenever I look at my opponent's team and I look what Pokemon can lead well off her, what Pokemon looks the most threatening versus their team, and I try to lead off with that, or maybe I just try to go get my hazards up, or I could just lead off. A lot of times we'll have something like a Noivern that I've used before, just something that's fast, they can U-turn out, they can get momentum, and just try to get whatever advantage I can in the moment. Because I feel like Pokemon is really a game of, as the more I play, the more I realize it's all about, can you stay in the driver's seat, as Bernard likes to say? Can you have the momentum and the game in your favor, and can you keep it there? And I try to do that with my hazards, with my getting my Pokemon into setup and play the game how I want to play it to be able to sweep. Of course, having those hazards up keeps if they want to keep on switching in and out, then they're going to keep on taking more and more chip. So I just try to get it to where I know that all the Pokemon are in range of my win condition, and then I try to get them in and go for the kill. So yeah, that's what I think.
I agree with you there. I think momentum, as you said, but I do believe this. Momentum is really important, right? So like having those pivot options is really important. I think that obviously that's how you can control the pace of a game. Like you said, with hazard chip is really important too. I think that it's when you're trying to read an opponent, it's very tricky sometimes, right? Because I think it's one of those things that the difficulty of reading your opponent goes up with the difficulty, or I should say with the skill level of that opponent. So if I'm playing an opponent that is, not the most experienced or skilled player in the world, I can more easily predict, like, okay, they're probably going to do this, they're probably going to do that. Versus if you start to play a more skilled or experienced player, then it gets a lot harder to kind of figure out what they're going to do. It becomes harder to follow their train of thought. So it's hard to really describe how to do that, I guess, in my opinion, and it's something that I do all the time, but it's, for me to explain it is actually pretty difficult to try and put words to it. It's just kind of like a feeling, if that makes sense. Like you have players that try to play it safe more. You have players that are more reckless, more risky.
Then you have the players who switch. Then you have the players who go hard Palafin on the road and wash. Go on.
Yes, that's next level stuff right there. Absolutely. But that is certainly a risk without reward. But no, but yeah. So there's all of that to consider, right? And so I think you can get a feel early sometimes for if your opponent is feeling more risky or more reserved about what they do, and you can kind of act accordingly. But there's no guarantees in prediction, right? Like Pokemon at the end of the day is like a chess match, and the whole purpose, it's a game of momentum, it's a game of predictions. The whole purpose is you want to figure out what your opponent is going to do before they do it, so then when they do it, you can stop them. And that is way easier said than done when it comes to most people. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is it's difficult, and the more skilled and experienced the player you're battling is, the more difficult it gets to try and do that.
Yeah, I feel like Pokemon is definitely one of the many, many things just in life where the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Fair enough, for sure.
And man, it doesn't help that all of us upload. So people who if they care to know how we play, they're gonna find out.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is something else I've said in the past. That being one person who uploads their content in a league of people that not all of them upload their content is a huge disadvantage. And I think not to slight Ray for his great success in this league, because we can't take that away from him. But I do think, especially in the first couple of seasons, a big advantage that Ray had over a lot of other players was that he either wouldn't upload his games, or even in the later seasons when he would upload his games, most of the time there was no commentary, so you couldn't actually hear the thought process behind why he was doing what he was doing. So that makes it a lot, when you're a mystery to your opponent, that makes it a lot easier for you to win. So but obviously that's only one of many factors that goes into Ray being the Titan that he is as a player, but that's definitely an important one.
Yeah, the streams is already more than some do, though, to be fair. Luckily I have the privilege of prepping with Ray, so I know exactly what he's talking about usually, or at least in his prep. Obviously I have no idea what he's thinking in the actual battle, and that's still why Ray is still a bit of a mystery to me, even as someone who's as close to him as I am. But yeah, that's still very impressive as a feat, for sure. But yeah, I think for me, I personally feel like it's interesting what Cap said earlier about people being harder to predict when they're good. Because ironically enough, even though I do absolutely think you can't reasonably read good players all the time, I actually, ironically enough, feel like I have a harder time reading less experienced players, because I feel like whenever I try to make a prediction, I just think of the most optimal thing, but I'm not always good at gauging if my opponent knows what their optimal play would be. Because obviously they don't know what sets I'm running, right? Only I know that. So I can see from my perspective what should be their most optimal play, but it's always a big what if of, do they see that as well? And I feel like less experienced players don't see that option as often as more experienced ones. So for example, right, if I feel like to take a very easy practical example, right? In the season 3 finals, I have my was it my Palafin? Yeah, my Palafin in against his Ogre Pawn, and I have a full health Zapdos, right? I'm gonna go to that Zapdos, and Ray knows that. He's not, it's a dead obvious switch. And he just goes for spikes because he wants to make progress, and he's not gonna just, go for a grass move in front of a healthy Zapdos. But I feel like, and that's an obvious situation, but in situations like that, where the play isn't as obvious, I don't always trust my opponent to see the correct play. And you can't fault them for that, because again, they don't know your sets. But I feel like for that, it's actually quite difficult for me to gauge what everyone does. And because of that, my number one tip to everyone would be to my number one tip to everyone, even as a Pokemon player, is stop predicting. Just make plays that cover what many different options your opponent could realistically do. And that's personally how I like to play. And obviously, if you're behind, you might sometimes have to make a play, or if it could give you a really advantageous state and there's no real big risk to it, you could make a big play. But generally speaking, I'd say what sets apart decent players from really good players is the ability to make plays that cover a bunch of realistic options, instead of just trying to make one play that punishes what you think your opponent will do the best. And there's plenty of videos on that, which I won't go into detail for, but that's, I'd say, what makes it for me. And that's also how I try to approach my games. That's definitely a thing that I learned throughout these seasons. I treat everyone the same, and I play against every person the same, because I feel like overthinking and trying to get into their mind and trying to learn how they think it might be a viable thing for some people, but I just know for a fact it's not going to get me anywhere. So that's how I approach my games. But yeah,
I think one thing that you said that I do agree with is not always you're not always assuming your opponent is going to make the quote unquote right play. And I think that's important for the fact that your opponent, you have to keep in mind that your opponent doesn't know your sets until you show them to him, right? So I think that's a mistake that I know that I've made in the past, in certain situations where I just think, oh, well, I'm looking at my set, I know what my set is, so he's going to expect this, and then therefore he's going to do this, so I shouldn't do that. But the problem is, if you haven't showed it to him, he doesn't know what it is, right? So you're almost like screwing yourself in that situation, because you're assuming that they know what you have when unless you show it to them, they don't know. So that's a trap I think that people can fall into easily.
For sure, we see it. I see it all the time in like other things as well. And I will absolutely say, this is something I had to learn. If you go back to like my season 1 or season 2 games, season 2 I think especially, back then I was low-key guilty of what I'm saying right now, of like trying to guess what my opponent does and punishing that one specific play as hard as possible. But that's just not, I mean, sometimes it can be successful, but it's not
well, that's the beauty of it, is it just kind of depends on the situation, right? Like there are some situations where doing that is the optimal play, like if you read that hard, if you can read that hard and say, okay, I know he's going to do this. Like, for example, if you're in
your opponent's head,
like if you're sitting on your Rotom Wash and you're like, well, I know in my heart my opponent is going to switch into Palafin here. I just know it. I just have to go for the Thunderbolt. Like, you know what I mean? And so situations like that, yeah, but you know, that's not always the correct play for sure.
Great example.
Thank you.
Because that made me think about like in season 2 where you had your Zamazenta, I have my Bisharp, and I remember you were so dumbfounded because I left the Bisharp in, and you went for like a Stone Edge, I think it was, expecting Noivern.
I was expecting either Noivern or Cress to come in. Like, I just didn't want to CC into Noivern or Cress, and I was baffled that you just let your Terra Captain stay in there. and even to this day, I still don't understand that play. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you there. It worked out, so I can't criticize it, but I still do not understand why you made that play when you have multiple good switches and a Terra Fairy you could have procced.
Because it goes into what we were talking about when people watch your videos to get like a little bit of an insight on you. And just something I remember from season 2, and I mean, I guess it's still kind of true, but you've gotten better at like hiding it. But like, I remember like in season 2, you were very good for trying to predict what your opponent does next. So I was like, you know what? Let me be stupid this one turn. Let me do the stupid thing I possibly do, and maybe it'll work out.
Let me be stupid. Oh my god.
Scorpion finally got the answer he's been looking for.
Yeah,
that's the most amazing explanation I've ever heard when it comes to any of this stuff.
Absolutely, bro. I'm crying. No, I will say, like to your credit, Brandon. I think I've said this in a video before, maybe even like recently, but I do think that when it comes to observing people's play styles, like you are very good at that. And I absolutely agree. I think especially because you didn't upload back in season 1, right? So you were still a bit of a mystery to me, whereas I did. And I feel like especially in that season 2 game, you freaking downloaded the hell out of me. Just knew what I was gonna do. And just like, let me make this one play that he will never expect. And it worked out.
And that's all.
There you have it.
So yeah, that was absolutely incredible. And I still feel like Brandon is actually quite good at that. I still feel like he knows quite well how other people play. I can just sort of see it, which is an impressive skill altogether. Like again, I don't think I'm very good at that, which is why I approach games the way I do. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting dynamic there between coaches that upload and those that don't. All right. Sorry, did you want to say something? Go on.
Oh no! I was just saying, yeah, like yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. I think that about did we cover every single viewer suggested topic there?
Are you doing a bit where I'm supposed to remind you that you're forgetting something at the end, like we always do, or no? Or are you generally forgetting this time?
I might be. Or we're literally almost 2 hours into this. Give me give me a quick reminder.
The quick reminder was a suggestion from this guy Beanard out of the server. I don't know who he is, but he had a suggestion or a question, and his question was, what do we think the future of the BHDL is going to look like? With the next season, the specifics, the coaches. I mean, it's kind of the other half of Biradu's question too, but I kind of like smashed it into my question. So yeah, that's what that was.
I genuinely thought you were about to mention that other question, but you know what? Never mind. So
what other question? Pray tell.
No, not much. Not mentioning it.
Well, they go hand in glove, but go on.
Anyway, so that is definitely something that I wanted to like end the podcast on, because we are nearly 2 hours into this, so I think it's a good time to sort of keep rounding it off.
That was my plan.
Yeah, so that's good call there. Good call. So, what are there any plans for season 5 regarding formats and dates? Now, I have been thinking. I've been observing, as I do best. There is first of all, let me get to the obvious things and the things that are already set. Regarding dates, Battle Hub Draft League Season 5 will more than likely start early 2025, because of the fact that we just had BHDL Season 4. Obviously, we were all tired from it, especially me and Ray, who got all the way to finals and had to play all those battles out. There is definitely a big part of us that deserves a break, I think. I'm definitely happy to go back to regular Wi-Fi battles. I think a lot of people are too. I think some of you have been doing that. And those who are very enthusiastic about draft, a lot of BHDL coaches who want to keep going, I think they've joined SDA, so that's another thing there. But yeah, as for BHDL Season 5, we will probably start obviously preparing for that behind the scenes very, very soon. But as far as when it starts, like when the format's going to be revealed or when we're going to open applications, stuff like that, again, expect early 2025, be it January, February, something like that. So I think that is the thing there. Regarding format, there are early ideas. I have been privately talking with some people on the team, not even everyone. There might, however, before I say anything, I do want to make it very clear that this will be a bit of a surprise. We're going to keep it like whatever we plan on changing. Again, there's no concrete stuff right here, but whatever we do end up changing will end up being a bit of a surprise and will come at a reveal at a later time. So all I can say is stay tuned, subscribe to the Battle Hub Draft League YouTube channel, join the Discord, yada yada, and stay tuned.
Wait. Are you saying go ahead and join the Discord server? It's the best place to go for certain things. Is that what we're trying to say here?
I was waiting for that comment. But yes, in that regard, please go ahead and join the Discord server. It is the best place to go for BHDL updates right now. There is a link in the description down below. There you go. We did the joke.
I've also noticed that only 36% of you people watching right now are actually subscribed to the BHDL YouTube channel, so you might as well go ahead and do that right now.
Do you know what? Why you say that, I am actually curious. I'm not going to check right now, but I am actually curious how many people that watch this channel are actually subscribed. But I guess maybe we can include that as an inside joke in a future video.
That would be amazing. You gotta find that out and get back to us on that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so yeah, again, as for dates, early 2025, and as for the format, definitely could be quite a crazy shakeup, but whatever it will be revealed at a later date, so we are not going to talk too much about it in here. And although I will say, one quick little sneak peek I can give, which has been kind of publicly talked about, is we are considering, and I'm not promising anything because we have a small team and we don't know how plausible it's going to be, but we are definitely considering the possibility of multiple divisions. That is the only thing I can confirm for you. Whether or not it will happen, again, I'm not promising anything. There is a very good chance that we'll end up going to our standard 16 coach format that we are used to in the BHDL. But for the BHDL fans that have been suggesting it, do know that we are in fact considering doing multiple divisions. And no, they won't be as big as 16, it will be a bit smaller, but we are looking at that rule shakeup, I guess, specifically.
Yeah, so I wanted to say a few things on this topic as well. So, I think for everybody curious, there's a lot of ideas that, we have that are, kicking around, that kind of thing. So I think that more than likely we'll probably end up, similar to where we were before, although like you said, obviously we have, we have a lot of ideas for stuff. I know some, other ideas, like we've kicked around the idea of multiple divisions. We've kicked around the ideas of like having certain like Ubers and legendaries be draftable at like a high point value price. That's another, kind of possibility, although, don't hold your breath on it. Yeah, and then as far as like Startgate goes, like I'd say, I know there's some people out there that are a little hot under the collar about wanting to start this thing. Biradu, oh sorry, catching my throat there.
Impatient Biradu.
Yeah, but no, I think probably the earliest we would be starting a season 5 would probably be like January 2025, but yeah, it's definitely going to happen. I think, I know everybody's always coy after every season of, whether it's going to happen or not, but I think the excitement's definitely there. The enthusiasm's there, for it. So
we can rest assured BHDL season 5 will be a thing. BHDL season 4, as I said in the announcement post as well, is not the last season of BHDL. It may be the last season on Scarlet and Violet, hopefully, if Legends ZA has PvP. But I guess only time will tell about that one. Game Freak.
I was just gonna.
Game Freak, please hurry the hell up with information on that game. We need to know.
I'm like 99% sure that BHDL 5 is going to be on Scarlet and Violet as well. Just saying, because I don't think we're not looking at like a Legends ZA coming out anytime soon. In my opinion,
I think he was talking about like season 6.
Yeah. Oh, season 6. I misheard you then. Yeah. So yeah. At that point, maybe by the time we get all the way to season 6, then yeah, we might have ZA if it has PvP. But that's a whole nother animal there. So I would also say, one thing else I want to mention is, and this is not so much like a rules thing, but I think we're headed for quite the shakeup here in next season of the BHDL for the fact that we've had a lot of coaches that have been with us for a long time here in the BHDL, and I think there's a few of them that won't be returning next season. So I think we're in for quite the roster shakeup next season, which is kind of an interesting thing. One of the things I guess we didn't really talk about too much in this video is and I think this was part of somebody's question, I can't remember whose question, of like what goes into making the league happen is creating the coach roster, right? And so we kind of we go back and forth, and we try to build a coach roster that's the best we can based off a lot of different factors, but reliability is probably number one, I think. We like to have people who are reliable, that we know they're going to show up for every game, every season. They're going to, play to win, that kind of thing. But just being there is the most important thing. We also like to have people who are active in the server, people who are part of like the online community as well, to take part. And it's always a little difficult for us. And I think the last season was probably the most difficult season for us to craft the coach roster, because we try to include as many of our returning coaches as we can, while trying to also make room for new coaches to show up, because we don't want it to be a case where it's just like nepotism, where it's just the same people all the time. But at the same time, we like to honor and give space to the coaches who've made the league great in the past as well. So it's a delicate balance of trying to fit new and old coaches onto the roster. But as I said, I think this upcoming season we're going to be in for a shakeup, because there's definitely a few coaches that have been with us for a very long period of time that I don't think will be coming back for one reason or another next season. So I think we may have more openings for new blood than perhaps ever before here in the BHDL. So I think it's definitely going to be an interesting and an exciting time.
Indeed, as it always is. Brendan,
I wonder
if any go on.
We get some information on Legends RC, or not Legends ZA, if that's going to start to get people excited about Pokemon again, if maybe some people that have kind of turned off, because we are kind of getting late into the life cycle of Scarlet and Violet here, if maybe we can get some people to come back and start playing.
Yeah.
That would be great, yeah. It does sometimes happen where, like, when a new game is announced, people go back to the current generation for a little bit just to kind of pick it up again before the new game comes out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Scarlet and Violet is starting to wear. It's where we just, I think, what is it? Yeah, I think just as we're recording this, perhaps like when this gets released, we're just hitting like the 2-year mark since Scarlet and Violet was released.
Yeah, exactly, actually, because the very last starter has just been released in the Mightiest mark. That's been going on since the release of Scarlet and Violet. It started off with Charizard, and they've been releasing them periodically every now and then as kind of like a sort of timeline thing, I guess. And the very last one released yesterday, which they really saved the best for last, man. Torterra is the last one.
Torterra?
Yeah, Torterra is the very last starter that they included in that. Saving the best for last.
And he is very obnoxious.
Torterra's,
I
did it yesterday. Torterra's raid is very difficult, not gonna lie. Genuinely.
I stopped doing those after. The only reason I did them was because that was the only way to get the Pokemon into the game.
Yeah,
before Home came out.
Yeah, they definitely lost a lot of.
Once you get Home and I had access to them, I'm like, I don't need this anymore.
They lost a lot of enthusiasm because, like, obviously when Charizard first came out, right, that was actually like a release in the game. Same with Cinderace, same with Greninja. But then when Pokemon Home and especially the Indigo Disc came around,
DLCs.
The Indigo Disc especially. The Indigo Disc especially was like the final nail into the coffin because you could catch all the starters in the terrarium anyway. So like at that point,
I can't tell you the last time I did a raid, because I don't have to,
Yeah. I did this one recently just because I really wanted to have a Torterra with the Mightiest mark. But if that's not what you're after, then
for you definitely, I was like, I know Scorpio.
Yeah, I'm I'm very thrilled to like be able to send out Torterra the Unrivaled. That sounds really cool. But yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
I was gonna say, as a quick last question to everybody, kind of piggybacking off the futuristic thing that I started to mention before.
Oh God, here we go.
I would like to pose the question to all of you. Or since we're going to be going through a coach roster shakeup perhaps next season, are there any coaches that have not participated in the BHDL that that you would like to see come to the BHDL, perhaps like YouTubers or anything like that? Let someone who you think that could bring more eyeballs to the BHDL. What do you think, Emerald?
I think Tony Torkel for sure. I'm trying to think
of
anybody else that we could try to get.
I think obviously I already know where Cap is going with this, but I'll give my genuine answer as well. There is another YouTuber who does a lot of drafting. I don't know if he's ever interested in joining the BHDL. I did ask him once, but he was too busy. But I would really love to get a YouTuber in the BHDL that goes by the name of Q the Costa Rican. He's also a very enthusiastic player, very solid draft participant. He won he actually won the league that me and Jack were in together. And I think he'd make I think he'd actually make for an amazing addition in BHDL. I don't know if he'll ever join, but that would be my wish personally, as far as PokeTubers go.
Brandon, what do you think?
Well, just like in draft, Scorpion sniped my answer. So, let's see.
That's okay. There are a lot of, and by a lot of,
if you check in the Battle Hub Discord, there's a lot of like good YouTubers in the YouTube section.
There's a lot of viable answers here, although there's one that's better than any other. But
go on.
If there was anyone in particular, hey, listen, I wouldn't mind having, and I know this is a stretch, I wouldn't mind having Viz in the BHDL.
Oh, dude, Viz would make an amazing coach.
Viz would destroy everyone.
Yeah, no, Viz I think Viz.
Although I will say, I'm 1-0 versus the guy.
Oh, nice.
Oh shit! There it is.
Yeah. No, I feel like as far as raw experience goes, Viz outclasses all of us by a long shot, even Ray. So yeah.
Dude, I remember being in draft leagues with Viz like back on the DS, and it was so hard back then. I think I played him probably like 4 or 5 times, and I only beat him like once. So it was really tough having somebody like him in draft. So
yeah, again, he's the specialist I was talking about, bro. He recently won a draft league with the Sun team, and it's like, how does this team not only win the league but freaking dominate it? And it's like, this guy cooks, bro. And what's absolutely even more amazing is that he, again, obviously we can't 100% verify this statement, but I'm willing to believe him on this. He does the same thing that Al does, where he preps 1 day in advance, and that's it, which is very impressive.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I could, if he said it, I would believe it, but But as for me, I am going to make a pick here that might surprise some of you, because there's one individual, one YouTuber, one PokeTuber that I think would be a great addition to the BHDL for various reasons. You may know of him, you may not know of him, you may have heard of him potentially, but he has a long and illustrious resume behind him as well, I would say. He is an individual, very multi-talented individual as well. He does a lot of different things. On YouTube, he plays Pokemon, he plays Yu-Gi-Oh, he plays basketball, he plays well, he doesn't play, but he raps too, He
dances.
Just a really, he does dance, as well. He's a very talented entertainer, all around. He is a YouTube icon, a true veteran of YouTube, I would say. He is a rap lord. If you didn't know that, he is definitely. He is the king of the court in basketball. He is infamous as well. He is none other than my old and good friend, Joey Fontaine. And I think that an entertainer the caliber of Joey Fontaine would certainly add some sugar and spice to the Battle Hub Draft League. But that is my wish list right there for all of you to cap it off. Pun intended.
As much as I don't like Joey Fontaine, I will say I'm impressed with how you presented that. That's you should be you should be a salesman.
You want to know what the best thing is?
He does have a lot of battles versus people like Shofu and Hayden and folks like that.
True, but the fight.
All the way back in X and Y and Oras, for crying out loud.
Yeah, the funniest thing about that is I literally just made that entire thing up right now.
Not surprised.
That was just me talking off the cuff of my hand. I didn't rehearse it. I didn't pre-plan it. It was off the cuff. So there you go.
Again, go be a salesman, bro. That's what they. Then you get paid to do stuff like that. I feel like you do it very well.
I appreciate it.
All right. I'm going to let you all give a quick closing thought to this whole podcast as a whole, and then I'm going to round it off. So take the stage.
I think it's crazy how you just said, you in a nutshell, you just said that B-Nard is capable of selling Joey Fontaine. And that in itself is a skill. That is a skill.
Yeah, honestly, you're right.
Yes.
No, I know I couldn't do that. At least not with the individual in question.
Yes. It's easy to sell. It's easy to sell your product when you are a big fan of your product. When you like your product, it is easy to sell it. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. Rob?
Yeah, I don't have much else to say. Just thanks for listening. Looking forward to season 5 and to getting some more folks.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good, productive discussion, and I am also as well looking for the future, looking for casual singles battles as well, casually competitive. I should say.
You and me gotta have a casual single battle.
Yeah, man, bring it on. I say it's long overdue.
Yeah.
A lot of showdowns in BHDL going, but I want to see how you've geared. I'd watch that battle. That sounds like a good time. But yeah.
Yes.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have just reached over the 2-hour mark. That is going to be it for our first episode of BHDL Audio Entertainment Podcast. Let me know if you guys actually like this sort of format, because we could definitely revisit it. Obviously, we kind of went all out today talking about a whole bunch of topics. We could definitely, if we do some future episodes in the future, maybe like depending on how well this is received, we could do some smaller ones, have some different guests on for sure. But yeah, again, let us know how what you thought of it. Let us know if you liked it or not. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. That is going to be us signing off. Stay tuned for any future updates regarding BHDL Season 5. Make sure to join the Discord server. Make sure to keep a track of the announcement channel at the top. There is also a BHDL updates role that you can grab in there, which will ping every time there is an update regarding Battle Hub Draft League Season 5. And yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Have a good day.
Peace.